Welcome to the Education Scotland podcast. In every episode, we are joined by teachers, professionals and experts to unpack some of the big questions and topics facing the education sector in Scotland. Stay informed with the latest on education in Scotland by subscribing to our podcast.
Hi there, my name's Louise Glen. I am a member of the Curriculum Learning, Teaching and Assessment team at Education Scotland, and my subject specialism is modern languages. So in today's podcast, I am going to speak with Hélène McGregor, a former colleague of mine from Glenrothes High School. Hélène has just recently retired after a long career in teaching languages. And really the focus of this podcast is mainly on the teaching of languages in the secondary school. But I thought that given Hélène's lengthy career as a very successful classroom teacher of modern languages, we need to grasp this opportunity to delve into her wealth of knowledge on what makes language learning a successful and attractive option for young people, because we know that there are difficulties at the moment in encouraging young people to take languages to qualifications level. So, with a 32-year career in teaching behind her, Hélène has huge insight into the many changes in the educational landscape that she has experienced and put into practice, particularly in the teaching of French, but also in Italian. She also has experienced the societal changes that have had an impact on the function of schools, and very much from a class teacher's perspective, which I think is going to be really fascinating. So I'm going to turn to you now, Hélène, and just ask you, what was it that drove you to consider a career in teaching?
First of all, bonjour, merci pour les compliments. I never intended to become a teacher, but I was at Dundee University in the days where you could spend a whole year abroad at university, met my husband-to-be, went back to France, realized that he didn't speak French, so that narrowed down what we were going to do. So I decided to move back to Scotland, and I thought, well, maybe I could try to do the postgraduate and become a teacher. Really, really not sure. I think we had about 6 weeks of theory, then the first placement in a school in Paisley, which was in a very deprived area. I can't remember exactly the name. And the first day I went home and I said to Scott, I want to be a teacher. Honestly, that day in the classroom made me realize that's what I really wanted to do.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yes, it was.
Okay, and then you moved on to, so after your teacher training, you moved over to Fife, where Scott's from.
Yes, and stayed in Glenrothes High for the rest of my career. Now, some might see it as lack of ambition, but it wasn't lack of ambition. It was, I had done a previous job before teaching. I was, my title was translator at the Mission of Thailand to the United Nations in Geneva, where most of the tasks I was doing was admin. And I realized that a lot of principal teacher tasks were admin, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to be face-to-face with the pupil. I didn't want to be distracted with paperwork. And also, I wanted to keep my carbon footprint down so I could walk to school every day.
So, and you did, as I remember. Oh, brilliant. Okay. So, you've had this long career, and may I say, you don't look as if you've had a long career. You've had a long career as a languages teacher, and can you just share with us what you think the major shifts have been in terms of approaches to language teaching over the years?
Right. I would say the first one, which has two sides, it's new technologies. That has been absolutely amazing in the sense, when I started, there was, hardly, I don't think there was internet right at the start in the early 90s. So with the new technology, you could access, videos to show the people, instead of just doing listenings, they could actually see people in the street, like real French people, real Italian people being interviewed in the street. So new technologies, great, obviously became essential during lockdown. So that was very good. There's sad things, for example, lack of assistance or no more assistance. And now with Brexit, not allowed more than 90 days, per so many months, so can't have them. I would say one thing in the last few years, I'm going to use a word I've learned not long ago. The assignment is a profligate exercise. Profligate, which is waste of resources. The most important resources in teaching is time. And I think the assignment is wasting a lot of time and it's pointless. It doesn't teach pupils to write, because I can see the variety of approaches to this assignment. So if I could, I would just get rid of that. That would put less onus on teachers to catch up. When people could be taught grammar, then they can manipulate the language and they can write their own sentences. And I would say the amount of paperwork that has to be produced is has a negative impact on pupils who get stressed, on teachers who waste time when they could be creating resources, doing something more useful than ticking boxes.
Okay. Thank you for that. So the shifts really, I suppose, and you're talking there about IT in particular. Do you think that has been the best development that you've seen over the years, or one of many developments? And is there something that you have seen emerge over the last 32 years of your teaching career in languages that you think that's been a key part of
Yes,
improvement?
I would say yes. I mean, new technologies, they have their bad side effects, like, mobile phone, attention span reduced, like what I call the TikTok generation of 40-second attention span. Yeah. But I think it is amazing because you have to embrace it. You can't be a dinosaur. You have to go with the flow. And sometimes you can dangle the carrot to the kids and say, right, tomorrow, if you learn your verbs, I will check and we'll do a Quizlet or, block it. And I think new technologies were amazing to make grammar fun.
Yes.
I mean, kids like grammar because it was logical. They didn't have to speak, so they would they could practice that. But with new technologies, grammar became fun, and I think that's what made them, my pupils made them able to just manipulate the language and write whatever, they wanted.
So really motivational
then.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. I know we're zipping through these questions here. Sorry, folks, if this is going a wee bit too quickly. What about, and I'm going into slight negative territory here, what do you think is the biggest barrier to learner success in languages? I spoke earlier about the low uptake that we've seen over the last 10 years in languages. You're talking about, the assignment as part of the qualifications. Is there anything else that you would add to that as a barrier?
Well, I'll have loads of reasons why the intake is low, but I would say the main barrier is... It's going to be sounding weird because everybody nowadays wants to be on TikTok, show their face, but they don't like the speaking. It's the self-awareness, like they're shy, they're not confident enough. The number of people who told me, I'm not picking French, I like French, but I don't like doing speaking tests, so I don't want to do French next year. And I think it's the lack of confidence, and they're not. I know we've got to teach them resilience, but they find that really, really off-putting.
When they have to sit in that isolated room, one-on-one with their teacher.
Because,
it's quite stressful,
if you can do any exam, the number of times I say, how did you go on in your prelim in whatever subject? Say, I just winged it. Well, you can't wing it in a speaking assessment because you've got the teacher in front of you, although we've got to be sympathetic and supportive. If you've not done the job, it shows. And I think that's... And they worry about that, but they shouldn't, because at the end of the day, we know that if they're willing to speak, it's easy to get a good mark.
Yes.
In a national 5 or higher. And I keep telling that to pupils, but no, we don't like speaking. And it's strange because once they get into a smaller class and they get into the habit, they just love it. They really do.
And obviously, knowing you as I do from our days at Glenrothes High together, the use of the target language was... it was the lingua franca, really, wasn't it? And you'd think that would inspire them or give them confidence, really, in the speaking. But no, you're right. I think it's that one-to-one scenario there. Okay, we've talked a bit about technology and how it's altered the teaching of modern, or it's become a complementary resource for teaching modern languages. Are there any other resources that you think are absolutely key for successful language teaching?
Yes, a huge variety, and variety in for example, if you do a reading, it has to be close reading, moving words. It can be kinetic. Using a smartboard. That was fantastic. Having a smartboard. Kinetic learning, reading from different sources. From a textbook, a photocopy, something you've made, or and reading, listening, having a variety of tasks. I think is really, really important. A carousel, and I think that's why, some children who are maybe struggling, academically, they do like languages because there's variety constantly in the class. 10 minutes speaking, 10 minutes listening, 10 minutes reading, writing, so it's not, so they can find something where they're good at. They don't have to be good at everything, and that's why I think the pupils, the barrier is like they say, oh, I'm really good at science because I'm at such level, at the end of second year, but in French I'm not. And they've got to realize their brain is still developing. It's like they're a young child, they're learning a language, and that's why they need still to progress, and they progress very quickly when they're in the S3, and we can see that sometimes just you see the penny drop, and suddenly they're too young, I think, and that's leading to why the uptake is so low. I think it's one of the reasons the kids
measuring themselves.
They're too young to choose at the end of second year.
Oh, at the end of second year, absolutely too young then.
But if you ask me, I'll get you loads of reasons about that.
Yes. You can come back here and work, please. What about just in general, teaching in general, Hélène? What changes have you seen in the profession over your career?
Teaching in general, I would say the first thing, I was lucky to be among those who could have a 2-year probation with a principal teacher who were meeting once a week and not being distracted with a huge profile, a logbook having to be done. That is so time consuming. When you're a probationer, you have to get used to delivering maybe 3 courses, S1, 2, 3, or, even higher maybe. You have to get to know the school, you've got to get discipline, you've got to assert yourself as a teacher. And I think 1 year, and then you have to do all these lesson prep, and you have to, do all these extra things so it looks good for when you go for a job interview. I think that should be, if it could be brought back, 2 years in the same school, less paperwork, but more, support from, a principal teacher or, other teachers. I think, I would say that's that. One of the worst thing, I think, is the tri-level, quadri-level classes, as it has been the case in Glenrothes High. Small classes. So that's also linked to the uptake. I think it's a vicious circle. So if you want, I can go back to why there's low uptake. So, pupils having, different level, teachers having to teach, let's say, 3 level, but even within 3 level, N5, higher, advanced higher, you still have some N5 that might be N4, N5, so I think that is really, I think that's really, really tough on pupils and on the staff.
Interestingly, some of the feedback that we've had recently from pupils when we asked about pupil voice, and they completed a survey for us anonymously, and overwhelmingly they were saying that they don't like being in multi-level classes.
No, and that's one of the reasons. Some of the I don't know if you want me to go back about, the low uptake. I could give you more reason.
Yeah, sure.
So it could be lack of confidence, but also if you work in a small school like our school, when there was only 2 teachers, the pupil telling me when I speak to them at parents' evening, saying, "Oh, well, I think you would do well if you carried on in 3rd year," and the pupil telling me, "But I might not pick it because it might not run because the class will be small." And I'm thinking, well, this is a vicious circle. They don't pick it because it's small, so it's not being running. If it doesn't run for 1 year, then the next year the pupil think, well, this is not happening. Making it optional after 2nd year, I think is too early. The kids are too young to decide.
I would agree with you.
One of my friends is a translator. She translates patents in Glasgow. They really struggle to find translators because you need to have somebody who is British, that's their native language, or native language English, and they speak another language, but they struggle with finding them. Also, there's lots of companies who want AI to translate the patents because it's faster, it's cheaper. However, it's full of mistake. And recently they had a conference about the future of translation with AI. And the bottom line was there is a future for linguists because AI, the way it's applied just now, it's the modal collapse. So I had to learn what that means. Modal collapse is, for example, you use a word that you don't really know. Let's say the word belt, and you've got to translate that, or rivet. You have to translate that word. You're not sure. Well, AI will look up that word and scan through umpteen articles, say, okay, that's that word they've used, so we'll use this one. So the more it's being used, even if it's wrong, then that becomes the model. So we've all seen, instructions, on how to build something that make no sense because they have used the most common, usage of the word, but sometimes that's not the one you need. Hence, remember that text I sent you about the bank in France asking me if I was an old frame. No. Meaning if I had been a former executive, because it was Google Translate. So AI will work for a bit, but after, if there's no brain to double check, cross-reference what the exact meaning is, it's not going to work. So there is, in the future, there is a future for linguists, and we need them because nobody's speaking languages. So just now we are relying far too much on AI.
And getting misinterpretations and mistranslations.
Kids pick up the language. And the final nail in the coffin was Brexit, I think. That's why, people knew they couldn't do a year abroad. Now it's just only a term, has to be that. Maybe because I think Spanish got a big uptake because people still go on holiday in Spain, but France, but the language, learning French is getting lower all over the world. It's not just in Scottish school, the Francophonie, for example, Rwanda, you might say it's for political reason, but Rwanda used to be a Francophone country, and now they're being taught English at school, and that's the way it's going. So, yes.
Well, many challenges for languages, I think. I don't know why I laughed there, because it's actually really sad. Anyway.
Because it's better to laugh than to cry. But I would say if ever pupils are going to listen to the podcast thinking, option choice, they might be worried about, bi-level or tri-level classes. But we have found in our school that the bi-level, National 5 and higher, does work because the N5 will hear what we do with the higher, so they pick up on things.
So a bi-level class is okay. It's the tri-level, quadri-level that starts to become really impossible, isn't it? So let's move to, shall we move on to a positive note?
Yes.
Okay. What are the best bits, Hélène, about being a teacher? What were your best bits about being a teacher? My best bits,
well, as I said, that first day when I had pupils in front of me, and I have seen that, when I've been going to the primary school, they just hang on your every word because it's new and they're, it's really that, I don't mean to say like, I want to be the center of attention. That sounds bad. But no, it's just the fact that they want to learn something. Every day when they come at you and say, bonjour, ça va? And they say, bonjour, ça va? Most of them with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
Or if you have a pupil who comes and say, I've learned that word because, they want to impress you. And I said, where did you learn that word? That was a few years ago. And said, I read it in Le Monde. And I said, well, I've never read Le Monde. And, and that people came to do really, really grand thing in languages, we decided he was going to be the next spy in the world, because he speaks umpteen languages now.
Okay.
But even when the fact that kids want to learn a language and sometimes say, I liked French, so I want to do German, or I did German and I liked it, so I want to do French. To instill in them that by learning a new language, it opens up, it gives you, as they say in Italian, a window on the world. You want to learn things, and I think that's the best. And just to see the kids enjoying your language. Sometimes it can be noisy if you're in the math corridor and you've got the language side on the other side.
that was the case when I was there as well. Yeah, or, maths department quiet.
Recently, my third year class, there was a small third year, I made them play Scrabble in French, and they loved it. I have kept a photo of them on my phone. They've got all their head in the dictionary because they didn't want to show their face. But just tiny wee thing like that, I think it is just, when I think of that just warms my heart.
Just brings it alive, doesn't it?
Or even the DAS class. It doesn't have to always be high flyers. The DAS class come and say, buongiorno, come va? And then a week later, I see them, in Morrison's because they are doing buying their cafe thing, and they see me and they go, buongiorno, come va? In the supermarket. And I think that is just, Yes, that I think and it keeps your mind young to be with young people.
Yes.
They teach you new words. Sometimes some you don't want to know, but yes,
great.
I think
Thank
it is
you.
a great profession. It's challenging, but it is very rewarding if you keep on the positive. You have to train your brain to think positive, otherwise
it could get to you.
Yes.
Okay. Right, we're going to end this just with some quick fire responses, please. So I just want a yes or a no, and if a why is required, then fire it in then. Okay. Textbooks.
Not just one. Variety. You don't want to be, otherwise it's too prescriptive.
Thank you. Google Translate.
No, otherwise you might ask if you're an old frame. So no. No
what
way.
about noting down vocabulary from the board or the smart board or whatever versus handing out vocabulary lists?
I think noting down vocab is a great way to get them to settle down. And for example, I had in the past couple of years lots and lots of kids with dyslexia or really low literacy level. So I would say, right, you write the English words and I will write the French. So I would go around, write the French one.
Okay.
So get them something to do. I think unless you're really short of time, I would be against handing out list of vocabulary. They need to have seen it once. That's my view.
Okay, thank you. What about accuracy in the language versus communicative competence?
Right. I will say accuracy when you get maybe to, I don't know, you don't want accuracy at the detriment of communication, because otherwise that's what will put them off. You want them to be able to communicate what they want. I go once a week to an Afghan family to teach them mother English. Sometimes I get texts, and I've got to work out what they're saying, but I know what they mean, so that's fine. And that's what's important. So you just say, okay, fine. And then you correct them. And then as people have corrected me for the last 32 years, and I'm glad they did, otherwise I would still make stupid mistakes.
And so it just develops, I suppose,
Yes,
from the communicative competence to the accuracy.
Communication is the most important thing.
Okay, merci. What about, right, 2 more questions.
Yes.
Right, okay. 2 more quick fires. 1, mobile phones.
If it wasn't for mobile phone, I might still be teaching.
Okay, we'll leave that one there. That's quite the devastating statement there, Hélène.
I did give the positives of mobile phone, at the start, and they are good. I remember, when you write things on the board and somebody's off, I would say, right, somebody take a photo of that and you email it or post it or Instagram it or snaps, whatever they say, to somebody else who's off. So that's good for that. But
okay, and homework.
Now you're asking a French person, not a French teacher, a French person. Inbred. Homework is inbred in the French that you have to do homework. Okay. I know some people disagree, but I think vocabulary learning should be done. It doesn't have to be, 20 minutes, just 5 minutes, just looking over the words, and then that's the only way you'll memorize the words. Otherwise, unless you've got a very powerful brain, you can remember everything you've heard in one lesson, which I doubt many can do.
Okay. Right, end of the quick fire and almost the end of our conversation. But before we finish up, I've got one more ask. Could you please share with us a memory of your time as a teacher that really stands out, or a memory that made you realise how much impact you'd made on learners' lives?
I don't know. There's so many, and I can't single one out, but I think just the fact that, kids come in your class, smiling, or I could say, in my dance class, it was a wee girl, she was the first one. I always wanted to do the National 2, assessment, and one of the PSAs stayed behind, and they said, this wee girl, when she left primary school, she was told, our mum was told, she's never going to be able to read and write. And that girl has passed the National 2
in Italian
with 2 periods a week. So I think that I've given her the confidence for an achievement. And in that same class, one of the parents was in tears. That parents were saying, "That's the first certificate my daughter has had." And I thought,
that is amazing.
That
is amazing.
And maybe because that's the parent, but I think it's just to give them the confidence that they can do something. But there's over 30 years,
of course there
are.
I love that one. That's a great example. Love that memory. Okay, so, sorry if I've rushed you there a wee bit then, but I'm getting kind of
that's
signals
fine.
here that I think we've
Okay.
gone well over time.
Right. Well, thank you
Hélène,
for having me.
thank you so much for coming.
No, my pleasure. Avec plaisir.
Avec plaisir, all the way from Glenrothes to Glasgow, from G to G. It's been fantastic to see you again.
Yes,
as a
same
friend,
here.
as an
Pareil,
ex-colleague.
de même.
And thanks everyone for listening in.
Merci et bonne continuation.
Merci.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for notification of when a new episode is published. If there is a topic you would like to hear featured on this podcast, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on our social media channels for all the latest news from Education Scotland. Education Scotland is a Scottish Government executive agency charged with supporting quality and improvement in Scottish education.